Hey, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish here with another episode of the Lazy D&D Talk Show. In this weekly show, we talk about all things D&D. If you enjoy this show, you can help me out in a few different ways. One, you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. Two, you can subscribe to my videos on YouTube. Three, you can become a direct supporter of Sly Flourish by going to the Sly Flourish Patreon, patreon.com/Sly Flourish, and becoming a patron of Sly Flourish. And four, you can pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, The Lazy DM's Workbook, Ruins of the Grundle Root, Fantastical Airs, or any of the others. So yeah, and this show, like all of the work of Sly Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Sly Flourish. So to the patrons of Sly Flourish, thank you very much for your continued support. I have a lot of things to talk about today. A lot of cool. It's funny. So throughout the week, I try to keep a Notion notebook page of topics for the show. And a lot of times I'm like, man, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about this week. Nothing is happening. And then tons of stuff happens. So I have lots of kind of fun things to talk about today. First, I want the Lazy DM's Companion Kickstarter preview page is now up. I am going to be launching a Kickstarter for my next book, The Lazy DM's Companion. If you're watching this show, it is probably a book you will want. I am very excited about this book. Patrons of Sly Flourish have been able to see previews of this book now for a long time and continue to see new previews of stuff that's coming out. And you can be notified on launch. I'm going to paste this into the Twitch chat right there. The link for this launch page is in the show notes below. And you can help me out for no money at all by going to this page and clicking the Notify Me on Launch link. And what that will do is that will send you an email through Kickstarter. First of all, lets Kickstarter know that you're interested, which helps in spooky algorithmic ways. But also, you will be notified by Kickstarter the minute we launch the campaign. And then you can run right to the campaign page and you can download the preview for free for the Lazy DM's Companion. Patrons have had access to this already, but I'll do a quick little look at this. So the preview is a 17-page preview, full color, fully edited, fully laid out. Scott Fitzgerald Gray did the editing and the layout for it. Artwork from Matt Morrow, cartography from Daniel Walthall, page design, all sorts of stuff, right? And perfectly free. So you immediately get usable stuff that you can throw right into your game today. There is an introduction. We have tools for improvisation, right off the bat. Kind of here's some quick things you can do to make your game easier. A lot of these things we've expanded on in other sections of the book. Building an RPG group, RPG safety tools, building situations right off the bat, like how do you do situation-based D&D? Spiral campaign development. How do you build spiral campaigns? We were talking a little bit about that before the show. Lazy combat encounters, a new approach for how to do easy encounter building. If you've watched this show, you've heard the two steps. Start with what makes sense and then figure out the potential deadliness. But there's little things for like scaling for higher levels in here. Tweaking the monster difficulty dials. How do you change up monsters to fit the pacing of the game? Wilderness exploration with lots of like random stuff here. Generating secrets and clues, prompts for how to build your secrets and clues. Core adventure generators. These are 2 pages of tables that you can use to build a whole slew of different adventures for your D&D games. These are sort of general purpose tables that you can use in lots of different ways throughout the rest of the book. And then we have a couple of adventure scenarios. Protect the Village, which is an adventure generator specifically designed around the idea that the characters are hired to protect a village from marauders. And then The Keep. There's some powerful entity trapped inside of some prison and people are trying to break it out and other people are trying to fight it and you have to deal with it. Some are protecting it, some are breaking it. Yada, yada, yada. And then we have a nice general purpose usable map by Daniel Walthall. It's got a mixture of natural caverns and fixed work. And this is all, so, we wanted to have a map that you could use for a lot of different reasons, a lot of different purposes. So where the Lazy DM workbook had maps that were specifically designed to fit a particular theme, like a castle or a dungeon or cellars or whatever. What we're doing here is building kind of more general purpose maps. You could kind of turn them. You can sort of cut rooms off. You can do things with them to build dungeons very quickly, a lot of times based on the generators that we include in the book. So that is the 17-page preview for the book that will be available to everybody for free. The full book is going to be 64 pages with a whole bunch of more stuff on it. You'll learn all about it when the Kickstarter comes out. And it will be, so the The Kickstarter is going to be on the 28th of September, in about 3 weeks or so. And we are going to be doing offset printing for this book and the other two Lazy Dungeon Master books, Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master and the Lazy DM's Workbook. It's the first time we'll be doing offset printing for all three. They are going to be in new formats. So there's going to be a hardcover glossy page version of Return. It'll probably be the best version of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master released. A spiral bound version of the workbook, so it will sit open on your table when you're running your games, and a perfect bound version of the Lazy DM's Companion. So all of that is going to be available in the Kickstarter, and you can right now you can be notified on launch. Click that and you will be notified on launch. So I'm very excited, and you're going to hear a lot about it. So I hope you are excited about it as I am, because you're going to hear more about it as we go forward, and we have more previews and all sorts of stuff going on. So it's going to be very cool. It has been 3 full days since our last rewrite of the Adventurers League. I can't help but make a little bit of fun at Adventurers League. I know it's hard work, and I know I'm not being fair. Boy, we've had like 11 rewrites of the Adventurers League rules, right? There's so much tweaking that goes on here. And maybe it's that it's more complicated than I can understand. My simple mind can't quite grasp exactly how complicated it is to try to get the Adventurers League to serve all of the different people who play in it, both DMs and administrators and all the different kinds of players that come in. I get it. But oh my God, sometimes it does not seem like it can be that hard. I got to imagine there's like multiple layers of bureaucracy that are coming up with the rules, because sometimes you look at them and you're like, what are you doing? Right? And they'll put the rules out, and then those rules have to sit. And then there's some rules where they say like, hey, yeah, we're going to talk about that in a future document, but that one's not ready yet. And you're like, so you're passing off, you're giving me some rules now, but you're passing off other rules to a document that isn't yet written and isn't yet out yet. So how do I know if these are any good? Because I don't know what those are, right? But anyway, Chris Tulach from Wizards of the Coast. Does this go to the yay? So Chris wrote an article here on the D&D Yawning Portal website. I'll paste that in the Twitch notes, and that will be in the show notes below, that discussed how to use organized play with fewer rules and more play, which is a philosophy. People said, no, it's not less rules, it's fewer rules. It's okay, relax. He's a good guy. It's doing hard work. 3 days ago. It's been 3 days since our last rewrite. He writes a very good guide about what the philosophy is. But you're like, why did it take so long for this philosophy? It's been 6 years. It's been 10 iterations, I think, of AL rules. Why does it take till now before we're like, you know what we do? We make sure we don't have rules that aren't fun. You think? And that's all great, right? Rules and paperwork, no one likes rules and paperwork, yada, yada, yada. So it's fine. It's great. And I will say, all of my poking aside, let's see. Oh, that opened a new window. Let me, can I even... That was weird. So the rules, this is the preview of the rules themselves. So, hey, they're not even final. Okay. But they're pretty good, right? Which is, hey, now you can make a 5th level character and you get a magic item, and you can start at 5th level and get into tier 2 content. That seems good. And it seems like it's time. Although their argument was the reason why you didn't have that before was because we wanted to make sure that new people learned the game before they jumped in. And you're like, yeah, but there's more new people playing the game now than there ever was. And now you've said it's okay. It's sort of like the core +1. They did core +1, which meant you could only play with the player's handbook plus one other book. And they did that forever. And people complained about it. But there was like really only one other book. And that was Xanathar's Guide and maybe Circo's Adventurer's Guide, right? There weren't many other books. And then they take that rule away now that there's Tasha's, right? And you're like, wait a minute, now when we needed it, you're getting rid of it. So why did you have it at all in the first place, right? So it's hard to not look at this and go, how come you didn't do this 6 years ago? That's really the hard part. They did get rid of a lot of rules. They did get rid of a lot of rules that were clearly just not a good idea, or that many people really didn't like. There was a severe limit on gold. They had the gold caps. They've gotten rid of the gold caps. They had this terrible seasonality segmenting in the last time, and that didn't last 6 months, right? I don't know if it was 6 months. But they had the whole idea of masters and legacy and seasonal, and then I forget other, right? I don't remember what the fourth one was. And they got rid of all of that except for the other category, and the other category makes sense. It basically is saying we have some campaigns like Oracle of War or the Ravenloft, the Mist Hunters Ravenloft campaign. Those are dedicated campaigns. They have their own characters, and those characters only live in that campaign and they don't go anywhere else. And for like Ravenloft and Eberron, that like, okay, that makes sense. My Forgotten Realms character should not be jumping in and out of Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft for that particular campaign. Same thing with like, Eberron and Forgotten Realms. You can understand why you don't have that. So okay, that makes total sense. But the the Masters / Legacy / seasonal thing. It was impossible. Like for me, like, you know, my wife and I play AL. We play AL online, right? We go to online conventions mostly. So we're playing like once every couple of months. We don't play a lot. And it was impossible to like, I can't keep track. Like I only have so many characters. I don't have a lot of characters. And the idea, like I want to play some Candlekeep, but I don't have a character capable of going to Candlekeep because they're in, I could take my character from Icewind Dale, from Rime of the Frost Maiden, and I could have them do the Candlekeep one. But then I can't go back again because they went from seasonality to Masters, and you can't go from Masters back to seasonality again. Right? And it was just like, I'm not going to pay attention to that. Right? So like, anyway, they got rid of it. The good news is the seasonality is generally gone, and that's good because no one, I couldn't even get an explanation for like, I think I actually found out or heard that the Moonshae stuff was half in and half out of Masters, right? That some of the Moonshae was in Masters and some of it was not. And you're like, oh my God, really? You know, some is seasonal and some is not? Oh, it's still all in Moonshae, right? So yeah, anyway, they got rid of that. There is, and so this is where like, oh yeah, there's rules for that, but it's somewhere else. And by the way, we haven't written that one yet, right? It's not rules, it's some, you know, it's more like guidelines. And the question I had was like, there are definitely problematic magic items that can wreck an AL game that I have seen in play. And the examples are, hey, my friend and I played through Tomb of Annihilation, and at level 2, I managed to get a Shield Guardian. And so I'm bringing my Shield Guardian now with me on all the adventures that are tier 1, and the Shield Guardian is going to go and take care of things for us. I've seen that happen, right? I guess the Shield Guardian has been banned in current play and in future play, and it's in some other. There's another guide. I think it's called the content catalog, the ALCC AL content catalog, and that one explicitly discusses which items you can't pass from one campaign to another, but it's not in here. Right. And so if you are a player and you pick up the player's guide and you play with a DM who happened to not know what he was doing and gave you a Shield Guardian, and then you go to a game and you're like, I'm bringing my Shield Guardian, the DM at that game is going to have to be like denied. Right. Why? Because you shouldn't have had it in the first place. So, you know, there has to be, I think the only area where you actually want to do any limitation on characters is magic items. And I actually think one of the things they got rid of in here is that you have the magic item caps, right? How many magic items magic item limit per tier, but it did not limit it by maximum type. So you couldn't say, for example, at tier 1, you can only have uncommon magical items. I think that was reasonable to have. I think the idea that it was like uncommon items at tier 1, rare items at tier 2, very rare at tier 3, and then tier 4 was everything, right? That made more sense to me, but whatever, no one's asking me. Otherwise, it's 3 pages. It's very slim. It definitely doesn't get in the way. The idea, getting rid of gold cap which should help many people. Many people really didn't, as far as I could tell. Certain loud people that I read on the internet really didn't like the gold cap. It never bothered me, but I never really played wizards who use gold a lot to scribe spells. I think the big deal is basically you're saying wizards get access to all the spells, you know, in higher tier content. And so the gold cap is gone, and more importantly, the seasonality thing was gone, because I think that was just a license to cheat. I think that as soon as you put seasonality limitations in place and said like, well, you can't take a character from Legacy and play them here, and you can't take them from here, or if they go in here and they go out, they can't come back. Like once a character hit Masters, you know, once you hit Masters, you can't go anywhere else. Like no one's going to pay attention. No one's going to care. The only way you'd get caught cheating is if you had a magic item from some place and you brought it forward, and then the DM happened to know, like, wait a minute, that magic item does not exist in this series. You could only have gotten that here, and if you got it here, you couldn't have come over here. You know, basically, like, I think that the idea was that when a new campaign comes out, they didn't want to have people show up with crazy broken stuff from older campaigns in a new campaign and then kind of wreck the game. I don't know if that was really a big problem. So, yeah. So here we are. It's great. It's fine. But oh my God, just the machinations of rules for AL really cracks me up. And, you know, hopefully, like, can you imagine going 2 years without a rules change? Right? I can't even imagine it. It hasn't certainly been that way. It's been, I think, basically every 6 to 9 months, there's been a new set of rules, and they're almost always significantly different than the rule set previous, which means even for someone like me who lives and breathes D&D all the time, who thinks about AL a lot, who plays AL, I can't keep up, right? I forget. I go, like, wait a minute, what about the rules from back then when you had, like, you know, points that you spent on magic items? Like, it's so crazy about all of the different things that they've tried and how extreme those changes have been. And I'm sure there's some interesting story about how all this happens in the background, right? Like how I'd like to know how the sausage gets made here. But we know that what comes out the other end are a whole bunch of different kinds of sausage, and some of them are not very tasty. So, yeah. If you want to know more about AL, if you want to talk to people who also do live and breathe AO, who will answer your questions, they answered some of mine. You can go to the D&D Discord. I think it's discord.com/D&D or Discord. Go to the D&D Discord. It's not hard to find. And one of the forums there, one of the Discord channels there is specifically for Adventurers League. The AL admins hang out there. That's where all the official announcements are made. That's their central hub for socialization about AL. And you can always find people there who will be able to answer your questions for them. So check that out. Alignments. So if we recall, I think it was, how many books now? Candlekeep didn't have them, and Van Richten's Guide didn't have alignment. They took away alignment for monsters. And I don't know that they explicitly said this, but the general consensus is that when you take certain humanoid creatures and you put a fixed alignment on them, you are severely limiting that. First of all, you're creating a bad stereotype, right? And really going back to sort of bad ways that we think about people, right? And their thought was, like when you apply something, if you have orcs and you say orcs are chaotic evil, well, that's really like this bad sort of stereotype that all orcs are chaotic evil. That alignment is broken often in storytelling, right? Because it's like, we want them. So you look at like, what was it? The computer game of, you go look at Planescape Torment, and Planescape Torment had an entire nation of undead that weren't evil, right? And you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So right away, going against the alignment of a monster was a pretty interesting way to go. But the general reaction was, well, why don't we just remove alignments from stat blocks? And I thought that I understood why they did it, and I don't disagree with the intent. But I felt like that was a nice bit of shorthand that helped DMs kind of understand, generally speaking, what this creature is going to be like. I can understand removing it for certain like conscious races. Again, your orcs and your goblins and stuff like that, where the idea that we want to say, like, we have now lots of nice goblins and orcs, right, in our campaigns, and many interesting campaign settings like Eberron have taken orcs and goblins and turned them into something else that isn't just a bunch of thieving little bastards or a bunch of ravenous, monsters. That's cool. But then you're like, what about a bullet, right? Or what about like an ettercap? Do we really are ettercaps really, demons? Like, aren't demons by definition fixed to an alignment? Why are we taking away alignments for demons? And anyway, the end result was they are bringing them back. We have seen them bringing back alignments in the upcoming, what's it called? Witchlight. The upcoming adventure, Wilds Beyond the Witchlight. And we saw this in a preview of a creature called the Jabberwock. If you're not familiar with the Jabberwock, go Google it, because it's got a really cool poem, and it has a connection to Vorpal Swords. Oh boy, I can't see this at all. So the Jabberwock, as we can see, has a new alignment thing where they added the word typically chaotic evil. Now, some would say, the monster manual already described alignment as not being 100%, right? That you could go, that I think the monster manual is explicitly said, this is the most common alignment for these types of creatures, i.e. this is typically. But, but they still listed it. And now they're kind of moving that one word, and it's like you're adding a word to every stat block with the word typically. Okay, I guess. Is that really? I don't know if that's where the complaints about stereotyping, and sort of, inherent racism that was kind of existed in D&D, which does exist. That's true. Was the alignment thing really the problem, right? I didn't see anybody who said alignment was a problem. I think I saw like a couple of tweets from people that are like, alignment is disgusting and should be removed totally. And you're like, I understand the drive, but I don't know that that's where the problem is, right? I think that there are other ways to address some of the inherent racism that exists in throughout D&D, and not just remove alignment from stat blocks. Like, I think that's kind of a small and somewhat lazy approach. Right, granted, I'm a lazy guy. So, so typically that's fine. I get, it's fine. Like, it's not going to wreck my world. They've got the space. It's not hard it's not going to make the stat block harder to use. And I do kind of like the fact that alignment is back in some form. I just don't think they need to even bother with the word typically. I don't think alignment was really the problem. I think if you want to change things up, you shouldn't have a stat block for an entire race that says they're all a bunch of thieving little bastards, like it does for the goblin in the monster manual. And instead, you could say goblins are this way. Goblins of this particular goblin god, they are a bunch of thieving little bastards, right? Because they are worshippers of this particular god. So goblins of Maglubiat, those guys are a bunch of bastards, right? So I think that same thing with like orcs of Grumsh, right? Like that you can have orcs, right? And not all orcs are a bunch of bastards. In fact, many of the orcs could be perfectly fine people that are, good members of society, just like half orcs are, right? We don't apply things to half orcs. Why do we apply them to orcs? So, and instead you could say orcs of Grumsh, they're bastards, right? Orcs of Grumsh. If you see an orc of Grumsh, and you can usually tell because they're wearing an eye patch and they have like a big hand on their forehead or something like that, watch out for those guys, right? Because they're nasty. Those guys have chosen to be a bunch of bastards, right? They have been, brought up as being a bunch of bastards. They're a bunch of bastards, right? So I think that I like that approach better. If I were going, if they said, hey, Mike, we'd like to get your advice on how to rewrite the monster manual, I would have sections that say, here's Drow, and then here's Drow of Menzoberranzan or Drow worshippers of Loth, right? And you have Drow over here, which are unaligned because they can be any alignment, just like any other elf can be. And then you have the Drow of Menzoberranzan or the Drow of worshippers of Loth, right? And they are nasty, right? And it's by choice, right? It's kind of by choice. It's still brought up there. That's a whole other sociological question. So interesting. What is sad about the Jabberwock is that it is challenge rating 13 and has 115 hit points. I like to focus on mechanics, more so than other people do. And I don't know what's going on, man. How hard is it to look at that and go, it's 115 hit points? I get that confusing burble is crazy powerful and does wacky stuff and probably makes it really hard to beat. But holy cow, a paladin, since it's any creature that starts its turn, a paladin can run up. It's CR 13, so it's not inconceivable that you'd be facing it at tier 3. But let's even say tier 2. A paladin can still go up and smite the hell out of it. If this thing's initiative went low, they'll kill it before it gets a turn. 115 hit points is like 3 turns of characters that are in tier 2-ish. Like a level 8 character can definitely dish out, a third of this, more than a third of this. So double the average hit points. Probably you would want to double the average hit points. Even the max is 170. 170 is closer. If you maxed out its hits ice, 170 is a little bit better. And then you go, oh, well, it has, it's vulnerable from slashing from a Vorpal Sword. That's cool. But you have to have a Vorpal Sword. And then where is it that it's got? Oh, it's got regen 10, but when it takes slashing damage, it's regen. I mean, come on. What a waste of space, right? Like, if you're going to bother putting regen in there, either give it regen or don't. But if it's regen from slashing damage, like, they're going to get slashed, right? Like, slashing damage is not a really rare form of magic. I would probably say slashing damage from a +2 or greater weapon or something like that, right? Like, make it so, yeah. So, yeah. So, this gets into my rant. So the people who are asking for 6th edition D&D, look at the design work of Tasha's and look at the design work of their later stuff and ask yourself if that's what you want for 6th edition, because that's what it would be, right? That's the stuff that's coming out now. And I look at Tasha's and there's stuff in Tasha's that's a complete mess, right? And I look at the monster design in 5e, it hasn't gotten better, right? Like, Mordenkainen's is a weak monster book. I wish it was great. I would love for that book to be great. And there are many monsters that are great. But then there's many who are like, what are you guys thinking? Let's go to the Red Abishai. I was looking at the Red Abishai, right? The Red Abishai is this challenge rating 19. Think about how high a 19th CR 19 creature is. That is really, really powerful. 255 hit points. That's a decent amount of hit points. There's a whole section. Somebody explain this to me because I'm probably being dumb. It would not surprise me. There's a whole, look at the size of this paragraph of text. Next to Frightful Presence is the largest block. The Abishai targets one dragon it can see within 120 feet. The dragon must make a DC 18 con save. The chromatic dragon makes it with disadvantage. On a successful save, immune to the Abishai's power of the Dragon Queen for 1 hour. On a failed save, the target is charmed by the Abishai for 1 hour. Who cares if they're charming a dragon? When's that going to come up? None of the characters are dragons. So we have a whole section, this huge paragraph of text on this stat block, right? Built for 2 NPCs to interact with one another. Who cares? Put that in the flavor text. Be like, hey, Red Abishai often command dragons, particularly chromatic dragons. I did it in 5 words, and it has the same effect, because I don't need a freaking stat block here to tell me how to have my Red Abishai charm a dragon. Maybe there's why. Somebody tell me why I'm getting it wrong. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong. There's got to be a good reason for this. I don't see it, and I see a lot of text there about dealing with dragons. So here's the other thing that drives me nuts, right? So multi-attack. Abishai can use his frightening presence. It also makes 3 attacks, 1 with Morningstar, 1 with claws, and 1 with a bite. Morningstar, plus 12 to hit, 10 piercing damage with a Morningstar, right? Okay, interesting. Claw, 12 to hit, 17 slashing damage. Why would the Red Abishai attack with a Morningstar that does, whatever that is, nearly half the damage? Drop the Morningstar and make 2 claw attacks, and you increase your attacks by 7. What is going on here, right? The bite is pretty hellacious, right? The bite is pretty nasty. So, the bite is 12 to hit, 22 piercing damage. Crazy amount of piercing damage. That's a big jaw on that thing. It's medium, too. Why does it do 3d10 on a bite with a medium creature? Man, I don't know. But whatever. So they does 22 piercing damage plus 38 fire damage, right, on a bite. That is tremendous. What is that? 40, 50, 60 points of damage? Is that average 60? That looks like 60 points of damage in the bite alone, right? So, okay, great. But why would its weapon attack be less than its natural weapon attack? Doesn't make any sense. So I have a feeling that like they built it with the Morningstar. The Morningstar did a bunch of damage, and they're like, oh, we're doing too much damage. Let's lower that. So they lowered the Morningstar. I don't get it. And then, hey, let's add this Power of the Dragon Queen thing on here, right? Give me a break. Oops, I clicked on something. So, yeah. So this gets into something which I'm going to talk about, and actually I'm gonna move the preview down, because one of the thoughts that I had about this is like most of the interesting things that are happening in the world of 5th edition aren't happening at Wizards of the Coast, right? Some of the most interesting design things that are going on there can happen outside of Wizards of the Coast because they're allowed to experiment more. Wizards isn't allowed to experiment more, but Wizards is experimenting. They're just putting out CR 13 monsters with 115 hit points, right? That doesn't seem like experimenting. That seems like bad design. What do I know, right? There's just me talking. And some people, I'm sure, have good reasons why they say, oh, they did. But I'm guessing that Jabberwock's going to get its ass kicked. So, Scipio says, didn't Jeremy Crawford say they have to tweak the stat blocks after the art comes out? Yes, they do. They many times have to tweak the monster in order to fit the artwork. So they add something, but they can't give it more damage. So next thing you have like a CR11 elf that fires a bow that does less damage than a goblin. Is there a way to figure out who designed certain? I don't want to put blame on anybody. Oh, I see. You want to find out who did the star spawns. I don't think you could pick, and I've heard this from Wizards, that you can't pick any single designer and be like, oh, the guy who did the star spawn was great. The guy who did the Red Abishai was not. There's so many different hands that go into every monster, but I have a feeling like something happened right at the end of Mordenkainen's where they like lowered the power of a lot of monsters, and it really wrecked a lot of monsters. Hoodigin is bad. There's so many monsters in there where you're like, what was going on? There were just mistakes that were made with Mordenkainen's, and it's sad because it's like a major monster book. That aside, what about some of the interesting things that are going in other areas? And there's a whole bunch. So I actually think a lot of very interesting things are happening with various Kickstarters. So we just saw Kobold Press, who is the #1 third-party publisher for 5th edition. They just came out with the Tome of Heroes, right? And they didn't come out with it, but they just finished their Kickstarter. They had nearly 7,000 backers, the $378,000 that they got for it, to put out a big book of character options, right? The trick with the character options, which I've talked about before, is because they're not in D&D Beyond, that's a pretty severe limiting factor there. But they definitely are going to have a lot of interesting options, and I bet you they're better than Tasha's, right? Like, I don't know. I trust them as much as I would trust Tasha's. Then we have like multiple campaign settings that are coming out. Tanares, almost a $1.5 million Kickstarter for this huge campaign setting, right? And really crazy number of authors, veteran authors who have written for a lot of D&D stuff that's going to be part of it. Really interesting stuff that's happening there. I back that one because it looks like a really good deal, and B, I like the hype train. Valda's Spire. I haven't really looked at this one, but more character options, $307,000, so getting close. They have 18 days to go, right? So this one is going to probably be bigger than the Tome of Heroes, but another big book of character options, right? 10 base classes, right? So look at all the experimenting that's going on in 5th edition. is pretty. I mean, that's kind of my point with all this. Is like there's a lot of Delver's Guide to Beast World, right? $258,000, 2,300 backers. Probably not for me, because animal anthropomorphizing isn't really what I love in D&D, but lots of people do. So you get a whole bunch of new species that you can play. Probably big with kids, But I know a lot of people that would love to play like wolf people. So, again, really cool art. A lot of stuff happening. All 5th edition compatible. And what's the last one? The Quest-o-Nomicon. This is done by XP to Level 3, which is a big YouTube channel, 500,000 viewer YouTube channel. And they are doing a book of short adventures and quests, right? And they have tremendous. I think Ghostfire is partnering with them, and anytime Ghostfire partners with you, you're going to do a pretty good deal. 26 days to go, 280. Well, I got it's jumping up what we're talking about. 3,000 backers. That's going to be a big project too. And look at all the tchotchkes and doodads that are going to be part of this. Cards and all sorts of miniatures, all sorts of things. So there is a lot. My point with this whole little segment is to say there is a lot of new and interesting things coming out in 5th edition that isn't at Wizards. And it's okay if Wizards puts out a book and it's not the best book, because there are many others that we can fall on, many different designers from many different publishers who are publishing lots of different things that are fully compatible with 5th edition. So, again, yeah, I definitely like Tome of Beast 2 more than I like Mordenkainen's, right? Like Mordenkainen, the lore in Mordenkainen's is really great. I love the lore stuff, right? And many of the monsters that are in Mordenkainen's are actually designed very nicely, right? And they work really well. But it's inconsistent, right? The same thing with Ravenloft. That Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft has many, many great monsters in it, and then some that are like, what was, scratching my head. So, yeah. Let's talk about another third-party product. So, Raging Swan Press, I've only really become aware of them in the last 6 months or a year, but I've kind of fallen in love with them. And so Raging Swan Press puts out many, many, many small, I would say OSR-like products. They have started producing more 5th edition products. And I think this is probably why I hadn't heard of them. I think they primarily focused on Pathfinder products, right? And I'm not a Pathfinder guy, so I didn't really follow them. But they have put out a lot. Some people in my Discord chat talked about it and said, oh, you should really check this stuff out. And I did. And there's many, many different products that Raging Swan creates. Let's take a look at their drive-thru page. I think I've talked about them before. I know I've talked about them before, and I think I might have even highlighted some of their products. So Raging Swan, let's come on. There's all these bundles. Let's pick we'll pick this thing, because their publisher page has lots of different cool stuff, and it shows like which of their stuff is their top sellers. I'll paste this in the Twitch chat. And I think I really like their OSR stuff. So they have like the system neutral urban dressing book, for example, is something that I had picked up. I've got it right here. A nice big thick book, kind of well done. Nondescript covers, right? Just a single monochrome color cover. This is a big book. For $21.50 for the PDF and softcover, it is a 178-page print book. So they are good deals on DriveThru because they are black and white. And that doesn't matter too much. Like the fact that they're black and white doesn't really matter, but they publish some really good stuff. So I want to talk about one of their products today, which is Shadowed Keep on the Borderlands. Shadowed Keep on the Borderlands is a adventure book. It is 90 pages. I have it both in physical copy. It is for 5th edition or Pathfinder. There isn't an OSR version, but the 5th edition one is pretty close. It is an homage, as written, it is an homage to two different books, classic adventure books, both by Gary Gygax, Keep on the Borderlands and The Village of Hamlet. And this sort of takes a lot of the concepts and ideas and feelings from those books and creates a new adventure book built around those concepts. It is a very classic style adventure. You have a big town, you have rumors and things that are going on in the town, you have different sort of quests that you pick up, and then you go and delve deep into a dungeon nearby that sits underneath a ruined keep. There are multiple factions that exist inside of the keep that are at war with one another. There's a bandit group that's dealing with some goblins. And there's bounty hunting missions that you take. It is a really well put together adventure. It's got cool handouts for the players, very clear about how you can get started and how to run it. Like what's interesting is while it pays a lot of credit back to classic D&D adventures like the Village of Hamlet or A Keep in the Borderlands, it's using modern sensibilities in its design to make it easy to run. And this is something that I think Crichton at Raging Swan really understands, is how to make things that are useful to DMs to help them run games, which is something that I love and something that I really subscribe to. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. And they do that in this adventure. Lots of different bits of lore, a rumor table, including false rumors. I'm not crazy about false rumors, but it can be kind of fun. Different knowledge checks that you can learn about what's going on. The town, Dulwich, really neat. It's actually pretty big, right? A 4,000 person town, and really more like a small city. So it's a pretty big place with a lot of people going around. And then, again, more kind of rumors, life that's going on. It's got an events table about what is happening in town. I've done this in my own adventures. I highly recommend sort of, you want a strong start, you roll 2d8 and you take a look at what happens here and you go, oh, a scrawny man in noble livery is struggling to carry a large ornate vase down the street, almost crashes into several people as he totters along. Cool, right? Really cool kind of way to deal with it. Lots of notable locations. So this is something that he does in this book that I think is fantastic. And he does it in multiple places, which is there's lots of detailed descriptions of stuff, but then there's these very quick guides, 1-page guides that says, here are all of the locations, and here's one sentence about what's there. And so you have this look at the beautiful cartography in here, right? That's a beautiful, beautiful map. And yet has this really who are the notable people, who are the notable locations, right? Really, really quick, 1-page stuff. Even though it's a big adventure, it really summarizes stuff very quickly. Notable streets. One, if I'm going to complain about anything, the thing I'll complain about is that, so this has been rebuilt, right? That this is, I think, the 2nd edition of this adventure. Crichton has run it many times. It's been play tested a lot, so it's been very well tested. Cool, what to do in between adventures. This is very 5th edition based. So even though this is originally a Pathfinder adventure, it's not like, hey, we just redid the DCs. He has stuff about in between adventures, what are some of the downtime activities you can do in town, right? How do you buy magic items? Really useful stuff, right? Really, really good. Really good, small campaign sort of stuff. Again, longer descriptions of the notable locations, but you can go back to that reference guide. So lots of stuff about the town. Then it's got stuff about the area around it. It actually feels very much like Ghost of Saltmarsh, right? Ghost of Saltmarsh had sort of the town and what's around it and the dungeons. It's sort of like a small version of that. The surrounds, lots of stuff going on around the area. Things, random encounters that you can have. Yeah, love me some good random encounters. Again, more beautiful maps of the area, deep descriptions of other cool adventure locations that the characters might go that aren't the main thrust of the book. I think that really makes it a living thing. And then you have the Shadowed Keep itself. The Shadowed Keep is a multi-level dungeon. So this adventure is built for 1st to 4th level characters. So it's a perfect tier 1 adventure. It gets you to 5th level, right? So think about it like a Lost Mine of Phandelver size thing. It's relatively, given that it's 90 pages, it's a relatively small level set. But I think it can work with, and I think it looks great. I think a lot of it is because half the book is about the town. Right, we're on page 36 before we get to the dungeon. Beautiful maps. I think this is a good question. I don't know if it comes with VTT compatible maps or not. Anybody in the Twitch chat that wants to see whether or not you can find VTT compatible maps for this, I would love to. Sorry, this is for Shadowed Keep on the Borderlands. The Shadowed Keep of the Borderlands 5e is there. I don't see that it comes with any VTT maps. Give me a second here. Oh, so Timothy says you can download VTT compatible maps for this on the Raging Swan website. Awesome. I will grab those and I will put that in the show notes below. Because I think VTT compatible maps for this would be really, really nice. So I'm glad to hear that they have it. Much like, look at the cool classic style art. Right. Actually, the guy, one of the artists for this is doing art for the Lazy DM's Companion. So you're going to see some similar art, although the Lazy DM Companion art is going to be color. Not that I'm not going to black and white. Black and white art is beautiful. Timeline, what happens? What are some ways that this evolves? It definitely has an idea that you would go and you would do some stuff, you would leave, you'd rest outside or go back to town and go back in again. And it's not intended that you crawl the whole thing all at once. You probably wouldn't be able to. And I believe somewhere in here I saw it. is for the bigger dungeons, they have that same sort of the key, right? Like what are here are the 16 rooms and one sentence about what's here, what monsters are there, very quick summary of it. They have some cool stuff. There's a little bit of a spoiler. They have like locations in here that are really hard to find that contain a lot of cool stuff. And the intention is like not everybody's going to find them. They are not intended for everybody to find them. I think that's really cool. So multiple dungeon layers, lots of different cool monsters, very classic style to it. Trapped rooms, trapped, neat monsters. So Raging said, why is it sold in color? It's because of the page size. Or sorry, the physical pages are thicker when you select the color, but it's still pretty cheap. So $21 is still really cheap, but it's a higher quality. If you selected black and white, the pages would be thinner. That's why it's using the color print, even though it's in black and white. It's because of the page thickness. So yes, neat dungeon design. It's got your Jayquay style dungeon design with loopbacks and secrets and all kinds of, things that you can do. There's loops here. There's loops here. Really great stuff. Beautiful maps. Again, cool art. I know I keep talking about the art. Hey, gelatinous cube. So if you were looking for a sort of traditional D&D adventure, something that feels like the old school D&D adventures without, and you could run the old ones. Like I've run Village of Hamlet and stuff like that for Keep of the Borderlands. Keep of the Borderlands was one of the playtest adventures when they were doing D&D Next. But this one's just, it's so well designed, right? It is so clean and it's sort of battle tested by having been run for years and then revised. And you don't get to see many adventures like that. Imagine if they took a book like Waterdeep Dragon Heist and said, we're rewriting it. We're rewriting it and reformatting it based on all of the different experiences of all the different DMs that ran it. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? And that's what they did with this one. And it's $21 for the PDF and the physical version is $21. I'm really hoping and planning to run this adventure soon for probably not any of my main groups, but I'm probably going to run it for one of my irregular groups because it just looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it captures that old school of D&D, and I'm really excited about it. I think a hard part is that this is out the same time that Scarlet Citadel from Kobold Press came out, and both of them have that sort of old school feel to them. Which of those two would you want to run? Right? Is a little bit of a tough sell. But I think this is significantly cheaper for one. And they're both really good. So yeah, so check out Shadowed Keep on the Borderlands by Raging Swan. Fantastic book, really cool. I spent an afternoon kind of reading it through, and the whole time I didn't see anything around like, oh, that doesn't work. Like, how is that supposed to work? I was like, no, this is really cool. I would really like to run it. So I highly recommend it. Check it out. So we've got about 15 minutes left to talk about some questions from patrons of Sly Flourish. So these are all questions that I picked out from we have a thread on the Sly Flourish Patreon page in which I ask for questions that I'll look through and I'll pick up and I'll talk about either in the show here or do a separate video where I talk about them. Or some of them I'm not going to be able to get to. Ryan R., a patron of Sly Flourish, asks, I'm currently running an open table West Marches Hex Crawl at a mead hall every Sunday. As a consequence of that, I rarely know who my players will be in advance, nor do I necessarily know what they will do once the session starts. I've got a kludge developing where I have secrets and clues broken out by region, i.e. secrets and clues found at the Dwarf Ruin. These clues can be found in Marrowwood, etc., in addition to the standard character-focused secrets and clues. But I would welcome more ideas for applying the tools of the lazy dungeon mastering to an open table environment. So really good and interesting questions. Probably, not a lot of people probably play this way. So, but yeah, I think there's a few things that would probably be useful. So one thing is, he brings this up as a West Marches style game. I think it's worth mentioning that this style doesn't, from my understanding of West Marches, doesn't fit the West March. One of a couple of key principles about West Marches, which is in a West Marches style D&D game, which you can you Google West Marches style D&D and you'll find an article about it. And I'll link to it in the notes below. But for those of you who are on Twitch, and if anybody wants to go find it and post the West Marches primer, the first article that talked about West Marches. So West Marches style games are games in which they are more player driven than DM driven. Players decide. You have an open world. You have multiple DMs that play in the same open world, and you have groups of players who go and essentially recruit DMs to run parts of it for them. And the players bring the topics. The players schedule the games. Right? They handle scheduling, and they tell the DM up front what area they're going to explore. And then the DM focuses on this area. In Ryan's situation, He's not running it that way. Instead, it's more like an Adventurers League style where players show up at the table. He doesn't know who they're going to be. And the first 5 people that shows up, he's going to run a game for them. And then they're going to go somewhere. And he probably offers up multiple options for them. And then they pick which way they're going to go. And as you can imagine, it is hard to do that and also be prepped for all of the things. So Creatures of Queen says he needs tons of tables in the background. Yeah, so random stuff can help you. But the reality is you're probably going to have to do some upfront homework. I would think in this style of game, you would want to do some upfront homework to develop all 3 of the locations you're planning to go to. So let's say you have a ruined watchtower, you have the weird cellars underneath the old inn, and you have that cave behind the waterfall, right? You have these 3 different locations, and you have 3 hooks for each of them. And then you would develop each of those locations as their own adventure, right? As a lazy DM adventure. And you would, in my thought, you would go through the 8 steps for each one of those, right? And then you'd have them set aside. So you're like, okay, I went through my 8 steps. I've got my secrets and clues. I got my interesting locations. I got monsters. I got NPCs. I got hooks. I got all the stuff. And then you take that and you put it aside. And you do I do that for the ruined watchtower. I do another one for the cellars underneath the inn. And I do another one for the cave behind the waterfall. And you'd have whole sets of locations, starts, secrets and clues, monsters, treasure, all of that is set aside for each one of those. And then when you go to your game, you say, these are the 3 options available. And they say, we want to do the cave behind the waterfall. And you go, great. And you take the other 2 and you set them aside and do the cave in the waterfall. And then the next group comes along and I don't know if you offer them the same one, the cave of the waterfall. Maybe you take the cave of the waterfall out because you've run it. Now you're bored. You take the one out, you add a new one, but you still got the other 2. And eventually they're going to pick those 2. So you're not wasting your prep because you still have these ready to go locations where you've done all the prep for each of them. If they pick that one, you can go there. You would probably want 5 or 10 minutes to refamiliarize yourself with stuff, right? But you could generally say, we're do that. You could also do it with published stuff. So you could say like, I'm going to take these short adventures, these like one session sort of adventures that you pick up on the DM's Guild, or you pick up a drive-through, and that fit the West Marches style. They have locations, they have maps, they have their own seat plots and monsters and stuff. And you just kind of bank them, right? And so you have like your stack of locations where you've prepped them all. And again, you probably need 5 or 10 minutes just to kind of reframe oh yeah, that's what this is about. Oh yeah, there's that weird thing. Oh, read through the secrets and clues again, right? And then you've got sort of that. So you could sort of keep each of them. I would think you would probably end up having to prep each of the locations you plan to run. Better is if you have some way of having the players decide beforehand, like a week beforehand, where they're going to go, then you get to narrow it down and say, I know they're going behind the cave and the waterfall, so that's the only thing I have to prep, right? That obviously is the more idealistic standpoint. But I think in this circumstance, when we talk about lazy DMing, we're talking about being efficient, and efficiency means you can prep all the locations because you know you're going to use them eventually, right? And I think that can work. So I hope that answers your question, Ryan. I think we talked about it a little bit on the Patreon page as well. Robert S. asks, what to do when the storyline stalls or goes stale? The same secrets and clues have been thrown out several times, and for whatever reason, the PCs don't take the bait. But they are kind of necessary, or at least important storylines. Would you ever talk away from or across the table as Mike to get the game back on track? Is that appropriate? So appropriate is whatever makes the game fun, right? There's no such thing as appropriate or inappropriate. Right? You do whatever works for you in your game, right? That's fundamental thing. Do what helps your game. If you want to have a conversation about it, have a conversation about it. It can't hurt. It sounds like there could be some other things going on in this circumstance, though. Are the characters not picking up the bait because they don't understand it or because they don't care? If they don't care, you have a different problem. And then you might need to either kind of change the nature of the game and figure out what do they care about? What are they interested in? This is one of the reasons why I'm so heavy-handed with session 0 character creation, like wiring in the campaign into character creation at session 0, is because you want them, if you're going to run Descent into Avernus, you want them to care about Elturel. If they don't care about Elturel, what's the point, right? So I think that, or Rime of the Frost Maiden, why are you going to go do 28 quests from levels 1 to 3 in 10 towns? I'm making fun. If you don't care about the people at 10 towns, right? And you don't want to help them survive the endless night. So you want to wire that stuff into the characters during session 0 so that they will want to pick up on every hook because they know their characters care about this stuff. This gets around that's not what my character would do. My character doesn't care about solving Elturel. Well, why not? The only characters you should be playing are the ones who care about Elturel, because in session 0, we talked about Elturel, right? You ask them like, hey, before you build your character, ask yourself why your character loves to support Elturel, right? So part of it could be that the storyline is stalling because the characters aren't invested, and the characters aren't invested, the players aren't invested. So there could be a disconnect between what was the theme and the drive of the adventure and what's the theme and drive of the characters. If there's a separation there, you got a problem. If you're in the middle of it, what do? You might have to reset. You might have to have that conversation. Like, in order for us to go forward with this campaign, it's important that the characters have a motivation to do this stuff. I'm going to ask you guys to come up with that motivation. Do like a mid-campaign session 0. All right. That could be an option. Now, the other one is they aren't picking it up because they aren't picking it up. And sometimes I think it is easier for DMs. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to make this statement right. Sometimes we hold our cards too close, right? And sometimes we just have to tell them. Sometimes the secret needs to be bold and obtuse and here's what's going on, right? And because like players are busy and they got a lot of things going on in their lives, right? And it's late on the night and they're tired and their kids they got soccer practice tomorrow, right? And so there's things going on and so sometimes you just have to bring it to them, right? You make the clues more overt. You do clues over and over again, right? Really wired in. And they go, yes, I know that. Stop talking to me about that secret. I know that I'm supposed to pick up the 3rd key at the cave behind the waterfall. Oh, right? And they're like, well, at least they know where they're supposed to go. So yeah. So if they're not picking it up because the players just aren't grabbing onto the stuff, is it because they don't care or they aren't picking up on it? And there could be different sort of problems. And out of campaign conversations are perfectly appropriate. So I hope that answers your question. We'll do one more question today. I got lots of questions. Nick D, the thing I always struggle with when there's skill checks. Oh boy, this is gonna be a long one. Maybe, I don't know. I'll have to do 5 minutes and maybe we'll talk. The thing I always struggle with is skill checks in a group. Since the characters can attempt things, even if they're not proficient picking locks, do you allow everyone to roll and try? Say the thief tries to pick a lock and fails. Can the other 4 members of the party each line up and get a turn at it? Sort of like in Airplane when they're all going to go do the persuasion check on the woman who's having a panic attack, right? Any Airplane fans out there? Say the thief, can the other 4 members each line up and take a turn? How do you handle the case where conceivably everyone could give it a shot? And doesn't that apply to most situations anyway? How do we make characters with special skills more special? If any character can't give it a shot and gets a lucky 20, it seems to minimize the character specializations. So yes, this is a whole... There's a lot to unpack in this, but luckily I have an article on this. I can't even spell, but Google doesn't care. Our ability check toolbox. I wrote this back in 2018. I'm going to post this in the chat. And there's a lot of different things to go on with, but there's one kind of key rule, and it's sort of the same key rule we use when we're balancing monster encounters. It's the same key rule we do in a lot of circumstances. Is what does the in-world circumstance dictate? Right? What is the actual situation in game? Let's think about that before we worry about mechanics and skill checks and all that stuff. First of all, there's also no such thing as a skill check. There are ability checks where skills can modify it with a proficiency modifier. There's a reason why there's a distinction, but it's kind of important that we know it. So when we're doing ability checks, you start with what's the situation in the world? And if the situation in the world is all of the characters can work on trying to pick the lock, there's no risk if anybody fails, there's no time limitations, then you could theoretically just say, you guys take some time and you pick the lock, right? And then the same goes for other circumstances. But you might say like, well, if you're going to try to convince the guard, you get one shot. And if you don't convince the guard's going to lock up and not tell you anything. Well, that's one chance, right? And so you have to kind of decide what are the circumstances in the world and then what applies to that, right? And that's why, so I have a great big this is a great big article, right? That's why I remember it. Great big article. And step 1 is read up on it again, right? Go read the Player's Handbook, Chapter 7, go read Chapter 8 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, read them regularly to understand how it's supposed to work in 5e, because there's little idiosyncrasies we kind of forget about that are in the game. Think about how randomness fits into the world, right? And decide, does it warrant a check? Can a passive check do it? Can somebody use the help action with you? Can somebody aid you in this? Should you roll secretly for the character's check? Because they might not know if they succeeded or failed. You know, if they're doing really well or there's some good reason for it, do you give them advantage on the check, sort of really boost it up? If the circumstances allow for it, go ahead and let the whole table roll. And then the highest roll is the one who really succeeds and learns something. I like that trick a lot. You can curb full table rolls by saying really only one character is able to work on this. And if they screw it up, that's that, right? But you got to think about like, what's the world tell you? Sometimes the whole table, if you're expecting the whole table can make a check and you're like, and it's important that somebody makes it, you don't want to halt the game if it turns out everybody fails, because sometimes you don't see anything higher than a 6, right? That's happened. And sometimes I think it is appropriate. I think we underuse, so the game doesn't really allow for this. They do expect that anybody can make a check and that only those trained can be proficient. But I think it is reasonable to say only somebody who's trained in Thieves' Tools can make this check. Or only somebody who is trained in Arcana or Religion can make this check. You can't, it requires a level of knowledge that those characters have and nobody else in the world does. And if they fail at it, nobody's going to be able to get it. I actually use that pretty regularly. I probably use that more often than somebody does. So when somebody says that they're going to aid an ally to get advantage on the check, or they're going to cast guidance on him, you want to know what that looks like. And something that Ryan from 2C Gaming brought up, which I think is a really good point, is that guidance is not an interrupt. So if a player says, I'm going to try to smash open that door, and then Clark says, oh, I'm going to cast guidance, they can't do it at that point, because the minute the player says, I'm going to smash open that door, they've already committed to an action. They've already started it. And guidance is also an action, and they can't do it ahead of time. So you could, a couple of times, you might stop and say, just for the record, before you guys attempt anything, you probably want to discuss how, as a group, how you're going to do it, and then do it that way. And that way the cleric says, okay, you're going to try to smash open the door. I'm going to help you out by casting guidance on you. And somebody says, I'm going to help back you up too. I'm going to take a really good, careful look at the door and see where you might be able to hit it to break the door open. And then the barbarian's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm guided. I've got my help action. And now I'm going to bust the door. The difference is you don't have this sort of like Magic the Gathering style interrupt process of, I'm going to smash open the door. Oh, I'm going to aid him. Oh, I'm going to cast guidance, right? Instead, you're saying, like, as a group, you should discuss what your approach is going to be, then do it, and then it all plays out in turn. And that way there's a sequence to ability checks that makes sense, rather than sort of everybody piling on everything at once. You can't cast, if a rogue is going to attempt something and doesn't tell the group that they're going to do it, the cleric can't guide them, because they're already doing it before the cleric has even figured out they're doing it. So instead, you want the group to talk about the fact, like, hey, I'm going to do this. Can you cast guidance on me? Yeah, okay. Boom. Okay, I'm guided. Now I'm going to go do this thing. So I think the answer, and so there's one other little tricky bit that's not in this article that I read about. Let's say, let's look at the Black Abishai or the Red Abishai. Let's not. We'll go sources, source books, Dungeon Master's Guide. Little note. So, this is my weekly pitch for, hey, the Dungeon Master's Guide has a whole lot of interesting things in it. It's probably worth a good skim, because a lot of the things people talk about a lot of the time are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and they're kind of hidden. So there was something about skill checks in here. Firearms, explosives, grenades, alien technology, plot points, combat options. Was there skill variants, ability options? This is the section I was looking for. And in here, somebody says, boy, I sure wish that D&D 5th edition had the Take 10. You remember the Take 10 where you could do essentially a passive check? And it's in here. Oh, where is it? I saw it. I gotta look for it. Maybe somebody help me out and tell me the section if you remember it. Running the game, table rules, using ability scores. Let's try this. Maybe it's under here. Yeah, so the ability checks section has a whole lot of information about what's going on. How did, in some cases, this basically talks about what I was talking about, which is that in some cases it's okay for people to do it. In some cases you have a context. There was a section on here. Yeah, variant, automatic successes. This is your take 10, right? Sometimes the randomness of a d20 leads to ludicrous results. D15, fighter with a strength of 20 helplessly smashes against the door. Meanwhile, a rogue with a strength of 10 rolls a 20 and knocks it. If it bothers you, consider automatic success for certain checks. Under this optional rule, a character automatically succeeds on an ability check with a DC less than or equal to the relevant ability score minus 5. So an example, a DC, if you have a 20 strength, you can break it down. Having proficiency with a skill or two can also grant automatic. If a character's proficiency bonus applies to his or her ability checks, the character automatically succeeds if the DC is 10 or less. If that character is 11th level or higher, it's DC 15. So if you're proficient in a skill, you automatically succeed if the DC is 10. I think another variant of this that you could apply is you can essentially take passives on anything. So I might make a rule. It's not quite in here, but this kind of changes into, you take your passive checks from the player's handbook and you take this idea and you put them together. And what you could get is, if you're willing to take 10 minutes, you can do essentially the equivalent of a passive check. So if I am trained if I'm a rogue and I'm particularly skilled, Mquib Y says, I personally do the passive checks on everything. So one way to do it is, if you're willing to take your time, if there's no real risk, if you don't have to do it just once, you can essentially say the rogue with a passive check of, whatever their dexterity plus their Thieves' Tools check, and let's say it's plus 8. That means they have a passive of 18. If they're willing to take 10 minutes, they can just do an 18 and automatically walk in. All right. And that way, I think it works out pretty well. So using passives everywhere. If you're not familiar with passives, if you think about passive perception, passive insight, passive investigation, you could also theoretically do passives on the other ones. They're not really passive because you're actually doing something, but that can give you the equivalent of like a take 10, right? Very, very simple sort of house rule that you can do to sort of get in. Can I bust down this door? Yeah, sure you can, right? And the other one's just like if they're good at it. But if you wanted to the automatic successes, this is a way. It does have a couple of ways to say, here's how you can, here's how you can do it. And also, this one also has the rule that you can use skill checks in different ability scores, like strength or intimidation, if you're bending a bar or ripping a phone book in half, right? So that's definitely a way to do it. So, Nick D, that should hopefully give you a bunch of different thoughts about how to do ability checks. Ability checks is a really interesting topic and something that I've been thinking about. I want to write another article about it. I've been thinking about the flow of ability checks. Because it's the core mechanic, we kind of, take it for granted. I think there's so many different ways to use it, so many different ways it applies, so many different approaches that it's actually a really big, complicated topic. And I don't know how best to sort of like build some lazy rules around it so we can do all of these interesting things. But I think a lot of times DMs sort of figure it out as they go, right? And you could try things out and you figure it as you go. So anyway, I think that is it for today's Lazy D&D talk show. I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, you can help me out in 5 ways. 1, you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. 2, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. 3, you can support me directly on Patreon by going to patreon.com/SlyFlourish and becoming a patron of Sly Flourish. 4, you can pick up any of my existing books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, and others. 5, you can follow my new Kickstarter. I have my Kickstarter for the Lazy DM's Companion coming out on the 28th. It's in the show notes below. Please go to it. Please click notify me on launch and you will be notified when this Kickstarter is live. If you're watching this video after the 28th of September, the Kickstarter is live and you can back the book directly. You can also download the preview. If it is past the 20th of October, you'll have to wait. There'll probably be some pre-order options. So you can probably pre-order the book as well. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. It is always a great pleasure of mine to sit and chat with you on a Sunday morning and talk about D&D. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Have a great day and get out there and play some D&D.